Hello, and you're very welcome to another edition of the JMac podcast. I'm John Mann, and of course, the show is sponsored by OrgaRetro.com. Check the website out and use my promo code JMac Podcast to get 15% off on the website. And today, I'm joined by Kevin McGarty, Gary Reynolds, and Daniel Goulding. So we'll start off with Kevin. How's tricks?
All good, John. All good. Just looking forward to the weekend and last set of games. So some interesting ties and some dead rubbers. So looking forward to getting a bit of bait with the lads in their beautiful jerseys. Daniel Goulding actually reminds me of a young Colin Corkery before he went to the Burgers. You know.
There's a combination of both. I'm kind of off the Burgers and Colin went on them, so.
And secondly, Gary, that's a lovely jersey. Where'd you get it from?
Lovely, yeah. Orga Retro sorting me out. Avas be local rivals on it, which won't go down well with the boys at home. But no, otherwise, lovely fit, John's probably reminded me the shape I probably need to get back into when I was playing county football. So if nothing, it's a nice, pleasant reminder maybe of a bit of work I have ahead of me in the next few weeks.
Well, I did say to you Monday if you wanted large, so
couldn't do that. If I go large, the next step up is extra large, so I have to keep it.
John, he reminds me of a throwback to the childhood when I was watching Declan Darcy at full forward. You know, do you remember with the Mikasa painter gloves? You remember the yellow gloves, yellow top, yellow gloves?
Jeez, yeah, that lad could play football.
And the great Daniel Goulding, how's tricks?
All good with me too, yeah. Fasting after a great win by the Rebels there against Laois last weekend. So look, at least we've something to play for going to the last weekend.
And where did you get that magnificent jersey from?
Retrowear sorted me out as well, yeah. It is the 84 special. It is a mighty job.
Yeah.
I don't know, did I wear them that tight back in the day, but it's fairly tight on me now anyway.
Yeah. That's the code for you, Daniel. And where did you get your jersey, Kev?
I got mine in the golf shop. Unfortunately, because I live in the UK after being sold out by the South, our jerseys are, they're held up, goods and services held up by Brexit. So thanks for that, John.
Super stuff. We're off to a belter. Division 1, boys. National League preview. We're really looking forward to it again this weekend. It's hard to believe it's all rocked around again, and these weeks are flying, thank God. So in Division 1, you have Armagh against Donegal, Tyrone against Monaghan, Roscommon against Kerry, and Galway against the Dubs. All looks to clash again to start the weekend. Armagh against Donegal. Gary Reynolds, how are you fixed with that one?
Yeah, it's funny, I'm not saying that we have, but, I think pundits all over the country in the usual Sunday game stuff, and even the guys in Ulster themselves have been fairly critical of Ulster football over the last couple of years. But Jesus, the league looks a little bit boring when you look like all the Ulster boys are going to be playing each other and then playing each other again in Championship. But it's probably been the most entertaining and free-flowing bit of football we've watched since it's all kicked off. Armagh, of course, got off to a great start with a great win over Monaghan, and then they were pipped last weekend. In the last maybe 10 minutes, Tyrone just ran through them. So you're looking again, it's probably going to be another free scoring game here. If Armagh forwards can click early on, they're going to get lots of chances there. I think even your man Declan Bonner last week was saying that he couldn't believe the amount of goal chances they coughed up last weekend, and it could have been 7 or 8 in the end. But I think the most telling point for them was that they hung in there and kept going till the end, and eventually stuck with Monaghan, kicking a couple of scores without reply. Paddy McBrearty stepped up when he needed to too, with Murphy going on. Don't want to always be harping on about the same lads, but it depends. I can't see Murphy obviously being back. I think he's going to even be a doubt for the Championship as well. So maybe with I'm assuming it's up in Armagh as well, John. But so maybe with that in mind, Armagh looking to kick on again from last weekend. I think they might get a narrow win in that one, especially given the fact Murphy's out, and I think Donegal have a few issues in the full back line. Actually, of their full back line, Neil McGee, who's tipping 34-35, was probably their best player at the weekend. So I go with a tight win for Armagh, but again, they're just so hard to call up in Ulster at the moment. It could go either way, but it'll be a high scoring game again, I have a feeling.
Yeah. Apparently life starts when you're 30, so Neil McGee, you're in good shape. Daniel, what about that game?
Yeah, looking at a very interesting one again. I suppose we talked about Galway last week, and they conceded 5 or 6 goals against Kerry, but Donegal could have easily conceded another 4 or 5 goals against Monaghan. I think there was 9 or 10 goal chances they gave up. So, like, you'd imagine there's going to be huge emphasis on Donegal to shore up defensively for this game. Michael Murphy, huge loss, obviously, but I don't know. I always found when we were missing the likes of a Graham Canty or someone that everyone else picks up the slack a bit, and it kind of refocuses everyone again. So I'd expect Donegal to clip it, but very tight game. But I think that I suppose the game last week and the criticism they've come in for Michael Murphy missing now might just focus on Donegal minds a bit.
Yeah. I suppose, lads, I'll just be tipping it out with 1 or 2 questions. I mean, Daniel, for you, is this undefensive game now, this sort of open game? Is it a worry for teams? Because obviously we've seen Dublin score 4 goals, and ultimately everybody in Division 1's put in place a plan in place to try and counter what Dublin might bring to the table this year. So is that a worry that teams are now so open at the back at the minute?
Yeah, it's a funny one, because I genuinely believe the only way you'll beat Dublin is go toe-to-toe with them. I think Donegal's problem the last days, they had loads of fellas back, but they were doing nothing, which is nearly more dangerous, than having a blank defence and everyone just clogging up the middle. But there was runners coming from everywhere, and fellas still getting exposed one-on-one when there's 10 lads back inside their own 65. So I think it's like, for defensively, no, I think what the Dubs do, and even Kerry had to work so hard for their scores. Like, they pride themselves on being able to defend one-on-one, and like when it comes to Dublin are still the best team defensively in the country, and that's because they can all mark their men one-on-one, generally speaking. And they maybe now looked at this way Donegal up. I think they got exposed a bit against Cavan last year as well, kind of defensively. So I don't know. I don't think to prepare for Dublin that dropping everyone back is the answer either, because Dublin love that. I think we spoke about that last week as well. So I don't know. It's when you're individual battles first and come up with a mechanism that you can get 1 or 2 extra back. But I don't know. I think the days of preparing for Dublin with 14 men behind the ball are gone.
Okay. And Gary, just on the flip side of what Daniel has said about Michael Murphy, can realistically Donegal win Ulster without Michael Murphy? Because we're only we're 3 weeks away from Donegal entering the championship here. They're the preliminary round clash against Down. So realistically, can they win Ulster without Michael Murphy?
I don't think so, Kev, being quite honest with you. Seeing the standard the other Ulster teams have brought to it, I mean, look at they clung in there and ended up getting a very important point at the end against Monaghan. But that's what was with Monaghan. They were without Drew Wiley and a couple of other guys who they actually started on the bench. So maybe Banty's looking to kind of blood a few lads in and see what life is going to be like without McManus and these fellas. And Donegal clawed them back in the end, to be fair to them. But I think someone who we maybe thought would have emerged a little bit more than he has. He came on the scene with a bang a couple of years ago, was Hugh McFadden. Kevin, you know him better up there. A big, massive, powerful. He can play ball, he can do everything, but he just seems to go missing the odd time during games. And I know he's thought very highly of by the boys up in Killybegs there in Donegal, but for some reason Donegal are still overly reliant. If things aren't going well out the middle, they have to bring Murphy out to try and bring a bit of parity around the middle, especially against a couple of the bigger teams. And I know Michael Langan came through last week. It was a serious solo run and buried one in the top corner, but they're going to need more people to do that. If Murphy's out missing, you're looking at their danger men. They're going to have to keep an eye on then is McBrearty inside, and if they can snuff out McBrearty, then they're in big trouble. So I do see there being a massive issue for Donegal there in getting an Ulster title, because they left last year's behind them, obviously took their eye off the ball against Cavan, and I'm thinking if Murphy doesn't make it back, they're going to be in big trouble. I don't know the makeup of the draw, Kev, you might tell me more, but if they've got usually in Ulster, sometimes you can get a nice, maybe handy round 1 or 2, but if Murphy's not back and not fully firing, I just think they're overly reliant on McBrearty then, and it can be easily stopped in that sense, unless McFadden and Oran McNeilis came on the end of last day. He probably needs a couple of more weeks, but if them boys can step up, maybe so, but I don't see them having much of a chance if Murphy's out, unfortunately.
Yeah, John, I suppose that's the one thing you said at the end, Gary, not to quote Donald Rumsfeld in front of the UN, but the big unknown is just how much Oran McNeilis can add to this team. I mean, Daniel, I don't know if you've played against him, but this guy he's a Rolls Royce, like he really is.
Yeah, no, I've played against him, and I've played against him up in, what's not Ballybuffet, what's the other place? Ballyshannon.
Shannon.
I've been taken up to Ballyshannon 3 times, probably knowing that you're not going to come out there with a win like before you even go up there. And he's a class act off both feet. Like he's and he was a huge loss to Donegal at the time when he did kind of walk away from it. And look, it's good to have him back. It's funny, Donegal, like if you go back to before the Cavan game last year, everyone was talking about them as maybe they're the only team that can beat Dublin. And there was a huge disappointment, not for John obviously, but when Cavan won, you kind of said, geez, Dublin straight into final, no offence, but like everyone's tipping Donegal. So it's funny with this, with COVID and with the shortened season, it's funny how things change. They could come back in 3 weeks' time and, be right up to where they were for some parts of last year. It's very hard to know at the moment.
Yeah, can't disagree with any of that. And you have Tyrone against Monaghan, a really intriguing game there now. And I suppose Monaghan probably looking for that win there, and Tyrone looking for that second elusive win. So, Daniel, that'll be a very tight game.
Yeah, it's another tight game. It's on Healy Park. I'd probably still fancy Tyrone. I think that Monaghan are blooding a couple of young lads and they look good the last day, but I'd love to know how much of that was Donegal not being at the races. I think Tyrone, if they're all out to win the game, that I think they'll still have a bit too much of them now. It could be a dogfight again, but I think they just have that bit extra class all over the pitch.
Yeah. And yourself, Gary, what would be the opinion on that one?
Yeah. I think it's probably similar to Daniel. I think Tyrone will have too much. I think Tyrone, as much as they have a short period of time with the league being shorter this year than any other year, they look to be, they've changed their team from last week to the weekend before. I know that McCurry didn't even get off the bench the week before, and then he's the star man at the weekend. So it's still showing them that they're still playing around a little bit. Matty Donnelly went back to 6, and I was seriously impressed with him. I suppose having played there myself, I'm kind of always looking to see what influence the 6 can have on the game. And they played P.D. Hart there the week, or was it the week before that he played there, or was he inside? But it just didn't work for whatever reason. So I thought Donnelly was brilliant there, and you might remember with about 10 minutes to go, he came up the left-hand side and he kicked an absolute wonder score with his bad foot. So that might be a new spot for Donnelly, and he seems to kind of orchestrate things a little bit more there, and I think he's actually better at it than P.D. Hart is. Hart's gone out to the wing now, so they're trying to solidify the defence a little bit to allow to kind of throw off the shackles a little bit up front. And we did say a couple of weeks ago, Kevin, I think when me and you were on, that Tyrone might look to throw the shackles off a little bit when Mickey Hart is gone and see what these exciting forwards have to offer. So similar to Daniel, I'd have to say that I think Tyrone might prevail in that one. But again, these Ulster games are so tight that it's not going to be by much, maybe a couple of points or whatever else.
And just maybe one quick one for both of you to answer. Obviously, Tyrone have a new management team in. They've had 18 years of Mickey Hart. They've had so much ups and so much downs in that period of expectation. But when you guys had a new manager come in, do you always feel the first year bounce, or does it take a while to adjust to somebody coming in?
I think in our case, when I suppose I've gone through a couple of managers, with Billy Morgan first after we lost an All-Ireland final in 07, and there was a bit of hassle with the strike and that those issues. Then Conor O'Coonan came in, and I suppose Conor kept it fairly similar to what Billy kind of same setup and same manner. And I suppose all it did was we were kind of extra focused because we lost our first 3 league games. We couldn't play them because of the strike that year. And you know what? Our main goal was just stay up, and there was automatically a huge focus in it. And I think you do definitely get a bounce, even and for no other reason than having a change of personnel. I think a change is as good as anything, and I suppose Conor and Billy would have kept things fairly similar, whereas here I think the new lads are changing it up a good bit. They look to be a bit more expansive, and they're not afraid to kind of implement a couple of different systems and try lads at different areas of the pitch. And I suppose with a short season as well, you just have to embrace that, and there can be a lot of enjoyment in that too. So look, I think if you look at Tyrone, they look like they're really enjoying their football, which I suppose is the big thing I take away from the first 2 games.
Yeah. And Gaz?
Yeah, Kevin, it's funny. It's a bounce. I don't know if it's a bounce or it's a willingness to have to go and prove yourself all over again, because I suppose when I was a young lad, we had Desi Dolan from senior from Westmeath, and he was a hard taskmaster. And once you kind of you built up a loyalty with him, he trusted you and he played you nearly all the time. And then Mickey Moran came into us, and he was after bringing Mayo and a couple of teams to All-Ireland finals. So that definitely gave us a bounce because it was a big name. But the problem that we probably had in Leitrim was, Kev, we had a new manager every 2 or 3 years. So it can have its positives, but eventually you're kind of getting drained from continually having to clean the slate and go again. And you might have had a great season. I remember Mickey Moran came in, and I was after having a great season under Desi Dolan, and he dropped me straight away because he felt that I was wing back bombing forward, and I was more worried about kicking points than I was about stopping them down the other end. So he was bringing an Ulster kind of a feeling to it. But I learned more in the first 6 weeks under Mickey Moran than I would have had I remained in the manager. So I think in Tyrone, as Daniel has said, it definitely will have been positives. I mean, they've had the same manager for 18, 20 years. So we spoke a few weeks ago about there's maybe 6 or 8 names we could throw off straight away that maybe haven't reached their potential in Tyrone because of maybe they weren't getting the chances under Mickey, or he didn't trust them. So there'll definitely be a bounce there for them anyway, Kevin. And in the counties like that, you'd be sure that they'll be definitely getting a bounce. And you can see that, as Daniel said, in the way the shackles have come off them.
Yeah, without a doubt. And you have Roscommon and Kerry in the next game. Not getting any easier for Stevie Poacher, Anthony Cunningham in Roscommon there. And Gary, Roscommon are looking at relegation, really, aren't they?
Yeah, and look, I'm not really going to give them too much sympathy, but I still, from a footballing perspective, Roscommon are stacked with really good footballers. They've done a great job there. I'll have to commend them as well. I would compare them probably to yourselves, John, in the sense that both ye kind of set out about 10, 15 years ago to kind of build up your underage. Maybe he's hadn't had the success he's thought he's deserved. He's were trying to get back on top from the great Cavan and great Roscommon teams, and serious credit has to be given because you've dished out a couple of Ulster titles at underage, and they have minor All-Irelands and under 20 successes as well to look back on. They're just at a stage now where they're trying to make that next step into the second group of teams that are challenging Dublin, Kerry. Daniel mentioned earlier Donegal, but there's that second group of teams that they're trying to break into because they're probably just lagging behind them, maybe in 8th to 10th place. And look, they have to get credit. They continually have been getting relegated the last few years, and they go and get promoted the following year. So there's nothing easy about doing that. But at some point, and maybe that's where the missing piece of the jigsaw, we spoke before, Kevin, about Poacher coming in. Maybe they thought he'd bring that little bit of a steely element that they were missing for Division 1. Look, they're going straight back down, but I wouldn't rule them out in a sense. They'll be waiting in the long grass for Galway, I think, in that Connacht semi-final, because obviously it's looking like it's going to be a Mayo Galway final. But Roscommon, you'd have to include them in that big two because they've won their fair share of Connacht titles in the last few years. So look, they're going to get beaten in this one, and you'd be fairly certain of it. But I think something needs to happen in the next 2-3 years for them to kind of solidify themselves in Division 1. Otherwise, that good team that they have put together at the moment may pass, and they could end up tumbling back down the divisions. But Kerry win anyway in that one.
And yeah, just on that, Gary, as well, like Roscommon going up after last year, and I think with the better selves to go up. So obviously huge disappointment to go straight down again. And I suppose that yo-yo thing is not really good for a team's morale, Gary.
I don't think it's good. No, I don't think it's good for anyone. And even from our own point of view in Leitrim a few years ago, you get up the euphoria getting up to Division 3, having not been up there for so long. Then you're straight back down. Then a couple of the older players that are in that Roscommon team, I know Cathal Craig and a couple of other lads pretty well, and they're seriously driven individuals. But at some point, having won a couple of Connachts now, are they kind of looking at themselves going, yeah, it's great playing in Division 1 and getting the run out in Croke Park, but when you're getting beaten by double digits, and I know all about it, it's not the easiest thing to keep coming back to. So at some point, a lot of their top quality players, the Smiths and these fellas in a couple of years, they're young lads now, they still have a long while left, but at some point it gets very draining when you're yo-yoing up and down and you're not really getting any sort of end product. You could see a couple of retirements in the next few years, but you'd be hoping if Poacher can get it together and pull off a Connacht final this year, and anything can happen then when they get that far. So probably a little bit for them to ponder and think about. And COVID has made it harder, obviously, because it's a shorter turnaround, but it's something that Roscommon need to sort out, I think, in the next year or two.
Yeah, absolutely. I suppose you can flip around the question, Daniel. Obviously, Roscommon and Kerry, but I seen Paddy Anderson off the ball, and he's doing great work there at the minute. But he was saying that defensive tactics is kind of gone out the window. It's old fashioned at this stage, Daniel. So Stevie might have to rethink his tactics.
Yeah, quite possibly. Yeah, it's an interesting one. Like, I wonder, will Kerry actually put out a full team this weekend? That's the other side of it. Will they say, right, we've had 2 good weeks now, we're pretty much by the max here, we're qualified. Will we give Clifford a break, Sean O'Shea a break? If they do, then look, Roscommon, it's anyone's game. Then I think if Dublin beat Galway, Roscommon could still stay. No, they're gone. Forget it, they're gone. I was looking at it wrong. It's a funny one as well. You don't know, our people like Roscommon could also say, right, we get ready for the relegation semi-final in 2 weeks' time, and we'll rest our players as well and try new things. So probably one of the, you'd imagine a Kerry win, but probably one of the games that are less important this weekend, really.
And just one other question, Daniel. Obviously, you're down there, you're close to them. Look, do Kerry have the defenders coming through at the minute? Do they have the Tom O'Sullivans and the Mike McCarthy's of the past? You know, these sort of guys that can live inside your pants, really, and that are tight mark and sort of that would, you know, that make you as a corner forward think, Jesus, boy, it's going to be a tight afternoon with this fella.
They have a couple, but I suppose it's not as if there's a lot of new lads coming through either. We've seen all the lads that were playing, say, last weekend for the last couple of years, and you know, I think on their day, if they're really, really tuned in, they can hold up well against Dublin. But I suppose you saw last day when they kind of switch off and they don't do their jobs, their defensive jobs. Gary would probably tell you more about it, but like letting runners off, getting caught over your head in the full back line, this kind of stuff. When they're not fully at it, they can look very ordinary. So I think you saw pretty much the same team 2 years ago defensively do well enough against Dublin in All-Ireland finals. So it's not as if they can't do it, but I suppose with them there's no room for error. That's the big thing I'd probably take out of it. They really have to be on top of their game, like all over their six backs. And like when Paul Murphy is left one-on-one with Conor O'Callaghan inside, like, you know, they're not at the races. And I suppose they steady things up a bit in the second half. And I still think Kerry's best form of defence is attacking, really. I think, you know, I think you need to get the ball into those lads as much as possible and try and play on the front foot as much as possible.
And not to prolong it, but do Kerry have a problem with their goalkeeper, Daniel?
Short kick out wise, you'd probably say it's not ideal. Shane Ryan, like, he's been good, we'll call it, but he's not elite like Cluxton or a couple of the other lads. And I know I saw there a funny one. I think Brendan Keeley was their goalie coach. He was back at number 16 the last day, which is an interesting one. I might bring myself into Cork for an old couple of free taking consultations and see can I get back in again. It's like he's a solid keeper, but I suppose I don't know, the same lad, if you've ever seen him playing with Ratmore, he plays out full forward and he's a serious operator, which is another interesting one. So he can't play football. It's just, I think, probably Dublin, we all look at Cluxton and Dublin, but like how they're set up out the pitch to get the kick out and receive the ball as well is way ahead of everyone else as well. So I suppose that is something to do with it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And in the last game of the weekend, you have Galway against Dublin, not getting any easier for Pádraig Joyce after beating Roscommon last weekend. And Gary, another 2 points for Dublin, really.
Yeah, it's looking that way, and no more than the Kerry game. As Daniel alluded to, I'd say that Dublin might give a few boys a run out this weekend as well. So I'm not sure from that point of view. You know, Galway should be winning that. It's probably over in Salthill or in Pearse Stadium. So, you know, they need the 2 points, regardless of whether they go down or not, or they go into a relegation playoff or whatever it is. They need a win under their belts, and no better way. You know, I know they bet Roscommon, all right, and they would have been probably expected to do so, but that's probably a rerun of the semi-final later on in the year. But Joyce will want to nail down a marker for the championship. If they can get a win here now, that kind of it'll banish more demons from that Kerry defeat, because it was deplorable down there. And I think we spoke a couple of weeks ago about pre-COVID, Galway were absolutely flying. They were being talked about as potential All-Ireland winners. And since with the restart after COVID, we came back, they've just been very, very bad and low on confidence. And Walsh and these boys are shipping the ball over to other people, and they're not taking on the responsibility. So Joyce needs to sort it out, and his defence is probably a little bit of a worry. They're conceding quite a few scores as well, and Roscommon got in handy at the weekend. So look, whether Dublin go with a full outfit or not, I think they're going to try and get a few lads back from injury. I think Bugler's back in training, so a few lads like that will get a run out, and it's not as crucial for Dublin to get the 2 points. But yeah, I'd probably still go with the Dubs to win it over there anyway, or even maybe a draw game at that point. But we'll see what happens. Yeah,
a draw could be an interesting shout in that one, because Galway really do need a win for confidence, but the Dubs aren't going to be easy. Daniel, Dublin and Galway.
Yeah, I think Dublin, even if they're resting lads, I think will probably still be too strong. I think Dessie Farrell's probably licking his lips at the game the last day, conceding a big score to Kerry, looking sloppy at times, and still coming out of there with a draw. So probably focus the minds again for them. I think it suits Dublin having these kind of tight games and going up to Tuam now. That'll suit them just to sharpen the minds again. We all know they're probably the best team in the country, football wise, by a considerable amount, and it's all about keeping fresh and keeping hungry is the big thing for them. And these semi-poor performances or not top-notch performances, I think that'll focus them at the right time, and they'll look to beat Galway, I think, and get into a league final, and then they can tone it down again for a small bit for the Leinster Championship and pick it up again after that.
Psychologically, Daniel, how important is this game for Galway after what has happened down in Kerry, and then obviously the small reaction they got last week? But psychologically, if they're hit with another 10, 12 point defeat, that's going to be very difficult to take. Absolutely,
and I think the big thing again is we keep coming. I think people underestimate how much the compressed season, what an influence it has this year. Like usually, if Galway took a bad beating in a normal season by Dublin the last game of the league, you could have club championship in the middle of it, kind of forget about it, get back, probably win a couple of challenge games, kind of get back in the road over 2 or 3 months. But if they take a heavy beating to Dublin, they're straight into championship on a very kind of negative platform, we call it, or with a backward step, and it'll be a big ask for them to pick it up again, especially if you're looking at we're after playing the two kind of tier 1 teams now, and we could have taken 2 bad beatings. But I suppose Park Joyce will be looking to build on last weekend. I suppose convincing enough win in the end, and they do have a lot of very good players, we know that, and I suppose it's a case of performing for them rather than that they're searching for kind of players to up it, like they have the players.
And Gaz, just a very controversial one here, not like me to be controversial. Have Dublin a bit of a hole in midfield at the minute? As in, Brian Fenton's maybe not played the sort of way that we expect, the high standards, of course, that Brian Fenton has, but they're looking somebody to partner with him. And the last 2 games they've played, for me, at times have been just that wee touch over rod at midfield. Obviously they'll have players to come in, but this Michael Dara-McCauley, somebody to come in and fill in that position, is that something that worries you about Dublin moving forward?
Yeah, I think so. I think it worries them themselves as well, Kevin, because, they were overly, you could say that Michael Dara-McCauley, although he didn't play a whole pile over the last couple of years, when he did come in, he always allowed Fenton that ability to get up and down the field more. Fenton could have the freedom to go, and he'd be the anchor in midfield, kind of keeping things tight there. And they've been looking to kind of, I think, subconsciously they've been trying to replace McCauley over the last couple of years, and they haven't been able to do that. They've moved McCarthy and a couple of lads into midfield because McCarthy will run the legs off most midfielders in the country. But when it comes down to kind of having a dog there that will allow Fenton to kind of fulfill his full potential and allow him to go and kick the points and make the fetches that he's usually doing, they're struggling, I think, at the moment, Kevin, to try and find someone to step up to the role there. They've had a couple of guys progress from the under-20s. There was a young lad kind of started the year with a bang last year, but I actually haven't seen him even in the squad since. He's a young guy from Lucan, and I only know because I would have played against him up there in Club Championship, and he was phenomenal. But he's gone off the scene altogether now. So they've had a few heir to the Macaulay throne as well that have come through. He's Emmett O'Conneilla as well, and a few lads like that who just haven't stepped up to the plate. So you're 100% correct. I think this age-old argument that Dublin are a little bit fragile in the full back line still probably exists a little bit, especially given the scores that Kerry put up last weekend, although without conceding till McMahon gave away the penalty. They didn't concede any goals. But there is an issue, I think, in the full back line and also maybe around midfield. Like, obviously Fitzsimons and these guys are brilliant at their job in corner back, and lads that Daniel probably marked as well before, they're excellent at their job. But that kind of command and full back, they've probably been missing that the last couple of years. And also, you know, around the middle there, you nailed it, Kev. I think they're trying to find a partner that can kind of do a bit of spoiling around the middle and allow Fenton to express himself more. And at the moment, James McCarthy fills that role very well at times, but I think they're going to want to maybe leave him at centre back or let him focus on his own job, you know. So it's a short turnaround in the year regards league matches, so they don't have the amount of tinkering that they could do in other years. But as Daniel said, they can probably do a little bit in the early rounds of the Leinster Championship as well. So they've lots of time, and these young lads that they're bringing in seem to just take off. So some young lad could appear in the Leinster Championship that we've never heard of before and take the championship by storm. So you never know what's around the corner. But it definitely is something must be in the back of Desi Farrell's mind, yeah.
Daniel, I suppose Johnny Cooper, they're not a commanding full back, according to Gary. You know, never fouled anybody in his life, did our Johnny?
Johnny fouling? Oh no, he would know how to. I would think James McCarthy will end up midfield by the championship. But you'd imagine. No, the only thing is with John Small. If John Small's hamstring injury is serious as it looked anyway, look, Dublin unfortunately don't have 3 or 4 James McCarthy, so it'll be interesting to see how that'll play out then. So they probably are only 1 or 2 injuries in midfield, so half back line being under pressure in the middle 8. But I suppose again, I think Dublin would probably be comfortable going in a shootout too. That's the thing. They've an embarrassment of riches up front when you think that Cormac Costello now is probably shooting the lights out, and he's a 5 to 10 minute impact player when it comes to the end of the year. Like, it's, you know, it's up front. They just seem to have abundance of riches.
Yeah, and the sad thing is Brian Howard might come in and take that midfield spot, Kev. So I think it could be covered, to be honest with you. So it's a frightening thing, boys. And of course, guys, this show is sponsored by orgaretro.com. Check the website and use my promo code JMAC Podcast to get 15% off on their website. Moving on into Division 2, you have Mayo against Meath. Probably one of the games of the weekend. Daniel, and Mayo probably looking for another win there, really.
Yeah, again, an interesting one. They're both through to semi-final, I think. So it depends whether they decide whether they want to get the top seed or they're just happy to rest a couple of players. You see with the injuries last weekend, it's probably getting to the kind of overload stage if you're playing 3 games in a row in 3 weeks. So it all depends really on how they put out the teams, and that will go for the other game, Westmeath and Down as well. They might just give lads a good break and get them ready for relegation semi-finals and promotion semi-finals here. Being right, you'd have to fancy Mayo, but it was impressed enough with. I watched the Westmeath and Mayo game last weekend. It was impressed enough with Westmeath, I must say. I thought they stuck to their task well and tried to play lovely football in fairness, and just Mayo again had just a bit of class and a bit of experience that the top tier teams have just kind of shone out in the end. But being right and two strong teams out, you say Mayo, but hard to judge if they're giving the panel a run out.
Yeah, absolutely. And Gaz, can you see Meath maybe pulling off shock here?
Yeah, it's not. It wouldn't be the most outrageous shock, if Mayo give the second string a kind of a run out. Horan seems to, even in his first stint with Mayo when they won the 5, he seems to have a great ability to change around teams a little bit during the league and still get the best out of them. I know they came down to Division 2 last year, but I think it's given them an option to actually have a quicker look at a lot of fellas, especially with all the retirements they had last year. Andy McEntee's tipping away with Meath as well there, and I know he's with them quite a while now, so they're going to be looking for a bit more progress out of him, but they're digging in and getting the results as well. Yeah, as Daniel said, they might have an eye down the road, but I think Horan needs to find players pretty quickly, because he knows, you know, with knockout in the championship, once he gets through the early stages, he's gonna need lads off the bench, and obviously with all the retirements they had, he needs guys to step up fairly quickly. I'd imagine it'll be a Mayo win anyway, having to go over to Castlebar. They're pretty strong over there and hard to beat, so you can imagine the O'Connors and these boys will still probably get a full game out of it, just to keep. He's been injury free for the last year and a half, and he's the type of lad I think Horan wants to keep at it when he's getting big scores, to keep him at it for confidence. So I think a Mayo win here, even though as Daniel said, they'll probably ring in the changes. Colin Boyle and a couple of these might get a start, who are coming back from long-term injuries. Yeah, so Mayo win, but again, could be a tight game, or me could pip it, but Mayo for me.
Daniel, is this sort of game Meath as a county developing up, maybe want to get back up into that Division 1 where they were? Is this the sort of game that they want to target, maybe say this year, next year, the sort of game where they want to go away from home and win? Is that sort of where they want to be at that level? Is maybe in the week before this game having the confidence to say, yeah, we can go over there and win that?
Yeah, it's hard to know really when you look at the other side, and you could have Kildare, Cork or Clare, and you don't know. Like, I don't think they'll be jostling for positions for between spots 1 and 2, and because you just don't know what's going to happen on the other side. So I suppose, as I said, right being right, and it being, I suppose, a normal season, you'll be gung-ho to win this, but depends on the camp and what the injury situation's like, and the fellas are fatigued or not, and I suppose the amount of GPS analysis and everything that goes into it now after every game, that might tell a lot in terms of what their load is like, and whether it's time to give other fellas a run out. But it wasn't normal season. Yeah, it's a big challenge for me. Then they'd love nothing more than to go up to McHale Park and get a win. Very hard place to get a win in the league game up there. So, yeah, big challenge for them. But I suppose it's very hard to second guess what managers are thinking till you see the team sheet.
Yeah, absolutely. And in the next game, you have Westmeath against Down, and probably a tight game there. And as we were saying the other day, Kevin, Down are going down really. So, Daniel, what are we thinking?
Yeah, I think, look, Westmeath are at home, played well enough last week. We'll probably look to build on that. Down, on the other hand, just look poor. Seem not to have moved with the times that most other teams are kind of, trying to play a bit more expansive. They're still stuck in kind of the 13 men behind the ball route and conceding the kick out all the time. So you'd imagine Cusick Park, Westmeath will probably be a bit too strong for them. And
what about yourself, Gary? Can Paddy Tally get that first win, or Westmeath going to get over the line again?
Yeah, I think the pressure's on him big time, and again, I go back to last year, John, and not giving Cavan the credit they deserve, but Down and Cavan bet last year in the Ulster Championship, and took their eye off the ball, but Cavan came from behind like they seem to do in every game and beat them. And I think straight away the pressure was a little bit, Kev, you'd know more up that end of the country. The pressure was on Tally straight away, because he came with a bit of a name, having won the Sigerson with Mary's. And I think looking back, that Mary's team he had, although a lot of them were very good footballers, they weren't the big names that the other big Sigerson Cup teams had. So he played a defensive game with them that time, and he was successful in winning out. So he's brought that same tempo into Down, and I think it came back to haunt them last year against Cavan when they should have kept the pressure on. They went into their shell. So he started this year straight away with the pressure on him, and then of course they were caught training outside the kind of COVID restrictions. So again, the pressure's on them, and all of a sudden, as we said at the very first kind of preview show we done, John, if you lose one game in this, all of a sudden the pressure's on you because you're going in low confidence, and if you lose a second and third game, that's it. You could go through the whole year without picking up points or a win at all, and that's where Down find themselves. As Daniel said, Westmeath were very impressive last week. I don't know, the last 15 minutes or after the final water break, they seemed to completely tire. So I'm not sure if it was, I think they picked up a couple of black cards as well, so discipline may have been an issue, but they completely tired for the last 10 minutes. Which allowed Mayo to kick on with their bench coming in with fresh legs. So I'd go with Westmeath being at home and Down being on a downward trajectory.
And just a quick one for you guys, in terms of Westmeath, you're close to them there. They've got 2 or 3 really, really good players. What is a realistic season for them this year in terms of, yes, they're down there now, is it staying in 2 and maybe getting a win or 2 wins in the championship?
Yeah, I think staying in 2, Kev, wouldn't be. Westmeath people, and as you said, the 3 or 4 big players that they have, Canellan and Heslin, and I seen Kieran Martin came on last weekend as well. We've played them a good bit in challenges over the years because we were so close and it was easy to organise. Yourself, you always end up playing your and they were always just ferocious in the tackle, physical outfit, big, tall guys, and we always found them really difficult to play against. So they'd be kind of toying with the idea of whether they'd want to get promoted out of Division 2. I'm not sure they would want to because, you end up shipping up a load of Hammerons then in Division 1 next year, whereas they are a good side and I do enjoy watching them. But I think they'd be happy to consolidate Division 2, Kev, and then maybe, as you said, depending on the draw, maybe get to a Leinster semi-final against the likes of Kildare, or indeed if they're in the side that Dublin are on, progress as much as they can. Outside Dublin and maybe Kildare and Meath, they're probably the next in line from that 2 or 3 in Leinster. So a Leinster final, they were in it a couple of years ago and got a drubbing off Dublin. It was kind of damage limitation. I think they kind of went out pretty defensively, but their manager seems to be very progressive, doing a good job there, and lots of positivity around the county at the moment. So as you said, consolidate Division 2, couple of Leinster Championship wins, and maybe if we're back to normal next year and COVID is gone, they'll be looking to maybe push on to try and challenge for Division 1.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know Leinster clash in the next game, Laois against Kildare, and probably another tight game. This Division 2 is looking very tight this weekend, lads. And Laois v Kildare, Gary, it'd be a brave man to call that one.
Yeah, there's a load of these, and I remember the first week we done this, John. I think Kev was laughing at me. I must have called 3 or 4 draws, and I think 1 or 2 of them might have come out. But some of these games are very tight to call. Daniel, I don't know if he's seen them down in Cork a couple of weeks ago. That was a bit of a surprise result for me. I think I tipped Cork down there because it's such a difficult place to go. But Jack O'Shea seems to be getting a bit of a tune out of these forwards now. Jimmy Hyland and these guys that were so impressive for the under-20s a few years ago, I wouldn't say they went missing, but they just didn't maybe hit the senior outfit as quickly and as fluidly as they liked, and it's not that easy for a lot of players. But local derby, not far to go. So I reckon Kildare will win that one. But again, it'll be fairly tight from that regard. I know Laois are actually, they're winless now at this stage. They probably would have expected to get a result against, at least Clare. So Clare gave them a good drubbing down in Ennis. And Kildare now have, if I'm looking here at it right, Kildare are licking their wounds after defeat to Clare. So I think Kildare will win this one, local derby and all that.
Yeah, fair enough. And Daniel, a tight game. So Laois Kildare.
Yeah, I've watched. Obviously, Cork have played the boat, and to be honest, I thought Laois were under pressure the last day. I thought Cork were far superior to them, and Cork kind of fell asleep in the second half, as opposed to Laois kind of really upping it. So I think if Kildare play to their potential, they'll have too much for Laois. Unless something drastic happens. I think Laois, after taking 2 heavy enough beatings now at this stage, it'll be hard to see him recover from it. I think Kildare will have a point to prove from being beaten by Clare the last day. Again, we talked about it last week, like what Colm Collins is doing in Clare is crazy stuff, really, and it has to be really commended.
Yeah, and then obviously we'll come to that game, Clare versus Cork. I suppose, Daniel, much more important for Cork this game. They don't want to be going to a semi-final in terms of relegation, semi-final back with the Wires. So it's a must-win really going up there this weekend. Yeah,
it is a must-win, and it's another big challenge for Cork that it's a bit like the Tip game last year, like not at the same level obviously, but put in a good performance and have been kind of comfortable last week, and now probably going into a very hard game, knowing that you never get anything easy up and in us when you go there. So look, I think Cork, I think I said last week, if Cork aren't at the races, they make things extremely hard for themselves. And in the same token, then if they are at the races, they can cut teams open when they're at it. So it's the kind of game they could win by 4 or 5 points or lose by 4 or 5 points, but it's going to be a huge battle there. And if Clare continue in the same vein, I wouldn't like to call it, being honest with you. I think a draw. I'm going to go with the draw, I'd say.
Very diplomatic.
Yeah.
Well, you must be due up in Annis for a suit fitting or something soon.
Most of the family in Clare.
And Gaz, I suppose if somebody had said that Clare would have 6 points at the end of this league campaign, you'd been carried away to the funny farm.
Yeah, and they're continuing to do it, Kevin. I think we've all, you're waiting for them to come tumbling back down the divisions, and they haven't. He's got them up there, and he's kept them up there, and we would have, when Colin Collins took over, it was maybe 5 or 6 years ago. They were down in the basement with us, and we played Clare a couple of times and had some great battles with them down there in Milltown Malby. I think it was next stop New York City. We were out on the coast, and it was a difficult place to go. But they were doing. You could see by their they were doing everything correctly. They had all the mannerisms of a team that were trying to change previous regimes. And I said, he seems to be doing a good job there. He came in and spoke to us in the dressing room after, and as Daniel said, he's just he's a really interesting guy. You'd listen to him all day. And I knew then, and he actually tried to step away a few years ago, and they wouldn't let him. So it's mad to think that 3 or 4 years on that we're actually not knowing who to call here in a Clare and Cork game. Normally it's a foregone conclusion, but with it being in Cusack Park and Ennis and Clare on a bit of an upward trajectory, I'd be calling Clare in this one. We were worried when Gary Brennan stepped away and a couple of other players. I know, is it Owen O'Leary, is it on the 40 there, is kicking some lovely scores. He's a left foot similar to Daniel's there, but he's a serious player, and they've a couple of really good young players that have come on. One guy scored 1-2 I think from wing back last weekend, so there's loads of talent there. I'd probably just give it to Clare in that sense, but again, because it's in Cusack Park, I don't know what the weather's to be like. I think it's actually to be really good this weekend, so loads of dry football, and I give it to Clare because, just as Daniel said, you just don't know what Cork, and they've been like that for a couple of years now. You just don't know what team is going to show up on any given day. You'd like to think Ronan O'Mahony is doing a good enough job. Did I get his name right, Daniel? Ronan McCarthy. He's there a while again, and he's doing a really good job. I'm actually looking. It's Derek O'Mahony ref, and it's O'Mahony. But no, he's a good. I think he's well got down there. Of course, Daniel will know the insides, but he seems to speak very well when he does speak as well. So I tip Clare just for the novelty.
John, can I give you? Go ahead, Daniel.
No, I was just going to say, how I'd sum up Cork. Cork played Dublin the week before they played Kildare, and by all accounts, they gave them a really good game. So that's I don't know, it's a challenge game, but challenge games are taken seriously enough, and Dublin had a strong team out, and unfortunately at the moment, and with the last number of years, even when I was involved near the end, that's Cork at the moment, is Jekyll and Hyde. When you don't expect them to play well, they'll pull a rabbit out of the hat, and when there's a bit of expectation, they've been found wanting. Look, it'll be 3 or 4 points either way. That's the way this game will go, I think. But I just hope Cork go up there and are at it. That's all I look for. I thought Powder last week. I talked about him last week. He played well. Luke Connolly was back. Looked dangerous. Just brings him something different. He's a tricky player, kind of streaky, kind of can do amazing things with the ball. And Kieran Sheehan came in and, I suppose, a blast from the past and looked lively up at full form, got a couple of good scores. So look, Cork have good players too. Probably not in as good form as Clare. That's the big thing. Clare kind of in form at the moment.
John, maybe if your listeners a bit of a lovely reminisce of a league game in Ennis a couple of years back. Antrim were playing them maybe the bottom of Division 2, top of Division 3, and it was the last league game. and the county board came to the players and they said, right lads, there's 2 ways we're going to do this. 1, you'll get an overnight stay in Clare, or 2, we'll hire a double-decker bus and we'll buy you a carry-out for the way home. So what did the lads all do? They decided, don't worry about paying for the overnight stay. We'll have the carry-out on the way home. I can't remember the match, and I certainly can't remember getting back to Belfast on a Sunday morning anyway.
And Kev, that's not the only story you'd have to tell me. And we can save that. We've saved a few stories at the end, but that is top class. That is absolutely top class. And
was it?
Oh, Daniel, on the way down the bus, nobody was even thinking about the match. It was a dead rubber. Right? All anybody was asking was where the carry was. There was boys hanging out of the bottom of the boat in Portlaoise.
And that's why Antrim are the first year at the minute, Kevin, with Mr. McGinley. Division 3, boys. Cavan against Derry. Probably one of the games of the weekend on TG Car at 3 o'clock this weekend. And Gary, I'll start with yourself. Massive game for the boys in blue.
Huge game. Derry are again, I don't know, you have to be careful what you say, because Kev is friends with all these bucks up the north, so I think he's mates with Gallagher as well. He played I think Gallagher played for 5 or 6 clubs, did he, Kev? And he was with G for a while as well, so
he only won the serious battle with the one club, Gary, you know.
yeah, but he seems to, again, I can't say I've watched the highlights, but of course, geez, the Sunday game are shocking. Like, they don't give you any insight to maybe. I know they can't show too much of the Division 3 and 4 games, but you can't really make out whether they're just throwing off the shackles and going at it, or they're playing quick ball out of the back line and moving it forward. Because we've played a couple of Gallagher teams over the years, and he actually came down and done a few sessions with us a few years ago with Leitrim, and it was all kind of getting back and getting forward, getting up and down the field, and having the ability and the engine on you to get up and down. So that Derry team, we would have played them in Division 4 a couple of years ago, and what I couldn't believe was their full 6 forwards were well fit to kick points from 30, 40, 50 yards, but for some reason they were still playing this kind of defensive stuff. And I see you can think by the last couple of games, they put up 5-13 against Fermanagh, and they put up 21 against Derry, and against Longford. And that's against the Fermanagh team, John, that beat Cavan. So it'll be interesting to see if Graham. I've watched a good few Cavan's games last year and this year. They do play quite defensively. Now, they can throw the shackles off and kick lots of scores. You've got Madden and these boys who are well able to kick points, and Martin Riley. But it's going to be interesting now what's going to happen with Cavan, because they're at a stage where, yes, they had a great year last year. They got off to a bad start this year. But what's going to happen now? Anything from here on in could seem very mediocre, John, if they don't push on another little bit more and kind of hit while the momentum is with them. So I'd have a feeling Saturday down in Cavan, it's not too hard of a trip for the Derry boys to make. It's going to be very tight. Cavan will have to just match them man for man, as Daniel said earlier. It's more gone down to one-on-one now, and if Cavan can do that, I think. I seen you tweeting yourself, John, the Holla Brady, and me brother had that bit of info as well. I think he's after doing his cruise ship, so he's a huge in the half back line, because I think that was a troublesome area for them, John, as well. They don't really have a recognised 6 there. Himself and Oisin Kieran, I think, are kind of sharing out that role, but it's a problem, I think, at the moment for Cavan to know whether they're going to push on to the next stage or not. Now, what the next stage is, I don't know. They won Ulster last year, but I think they need to get back up to Division 2, and if they're going to do that, they need to win this game. But Derry are on a crest of a wave, so nearly one of my famous draws, but I think Derry might pip this one, yeah.
You're never welcome in Cavan again, Gary. And yeah, that is actually an update. Apparently, Kieran the Holla Brady, our halfback, has done the cruise yet, so he could be out for the rest of the season, and that is a massive loss for Mickey Graham and the lads. So we wish Kieran Brady a speedy recovery. Daniel, what would you say?
Yeah, I suppose look at the table. Cavan have to win. I think Derry are pretty much through. Look at scoring difference. You can assume that Fermanagh are going to beat Longford, I think. Maybe not, but I think, look, it's hard to back against Derry, but I suppose if there's any team going to need a win today and or at the weekend and put up a big performance, it has to be Cavan. They're surely licking their wounds here after the success of last year, and it's a very hard one to call again. You could see a draw just as quickly. again, don't see these games live, so it's hard to look exactly what teams are about. But like, I suppose, boy, look here, the Cavan are going to have to get back to the heights they were at last year to beat Derry, so and get ready for the championship. So I'll be the teacher's pet here, and I'll give Cavan the win.
Brilliant, Daniel. Fair play to you.
And moving on, guys, swiftly, because I've nothing to ask about Cavan in case I get you into any trouble. Moving on then, obviously, Fermanagh play Longford. Fermanagh, obviously, bad defeat last day. And Longford, give a spirited display against Cavan, but really a game that Fermanagh need to win, obviously, to be in the top two. So, Gaz, what are you thinking?
Yeah, Longford will be very disappointed, especially conceding the amount of scores they've conceded. Big scores now against Derry and Cavan, and neither Cavan nor Derry, well, obviously Derry didn't, but Cavan never really looked like losing that game last week, and Longford would be the first boys to admit it. They're probably unfortunate because the way Division 3 has worked out for them the last few years, they've been able to pick up a win or two near the end and just about stay up by the skin of their teeth. But that could be a different scenario this year. I think they could go and get a result in Enniskillen. I really do. Pádraig Davis is over them. He's a shrewd boy. He's no Aegis, and he's well able to get them ready for big games. If they're going to do anything in the Leinster Championship, as regards just picking up one or two wins, I think they need to win this, even if they do end up going into that relegation game. If they can, they've quite a couple of good man markers, actually. You might remember Paddy Fox is there in the corner. He played with Mullinjachta, that Mullinjachta team that won the Leinster Championship a couple of years ago. He's a really good man marker. So if he can do a job on Quigley, I think Longford could have a chance here. So I'll just give me neighbours the nod for the crack, and I'll go with Longford.
And Daniel?
I'd probably go for Fermanagh, being honest. I think that, look, they have something to play for. I don't think Longford do. And I think that should be enough to see them through. Look, they've already beaten Cavan, so it's not as if they're a poor outfit. Even though the result last week was pretty heavy defeat. But yeah, I think at home, having to win and knowing that if they win, there's a good chance they'll be into semi-final. I'd probably give them the nod.
Super. And we're on a roll here for another tight game, lads. Offaly against Tipperary, and Daniel, I suppose Tip would be looking to win this one, wouldn't it?
Yeah, and by the looks of it, if they don't win it, they'll be in a relegation semi-final as well if Limerick beat Wicklow. So I suppose Tip a small bit like Cavan, huge heights last year and kind of trying to rebound now after losing their first game. Had a good win last week, but we would have expected that. So I suppose this is their biggest test of the year so far, and I suppose it'll be interesting to see a bit like Cavan now when the gun is really put to them, if they can step it up again. Tipperary don't want to be in a playoff to go into Division 4, so they have the couple of class forwards up front, and I'd still give them the nod. I know they're away, but I still think they have enough class to go to Offaly and get a result.
Yeah, absolutely. And guys, what do you think for that one?
Yeah, I think the same. I think Offaly's a lovely ground for getting up big scores, and the Tipperary forwards are capable of doing that if they get the time and space. The one thing about Offaly is they just keep, no more than the Longfords and the Clares of this world, they keep plucking away. They're always called to be relegated out of Division 3, and they just haven't been. Now they're up there 3 or 4 years in a row. So you must commend John Mahon. There's one thing he's always done is got his teams really, really fit, regardless of their football and skill or talent. They'll work hard. But I still think, no more than Daniel said, I think Tipperary are well capable of going up there and getting a result and kicking up some high scores. So I just give Tip the nod on this one as well. Yeah.
And then swiftly moving on to Wicklow, the Garden County versus Wicklow play this weekend. They play Limerick is right. Yeah. Sorry. How dare I forget the Trinity man? So Wicklow versus Limerick. Daniel, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, again, looks probably going to be a tight one. Wicklow played well against Tipperary last weekend at home. Gave a good account to themselves. Limerick probably still played well against Offaly and could have got a result up there, but Limerick have to go to Auckland now, so I'd still probably give the nod to Limerick. I think they're kind of on an upward curve and have a bit more to play for than Wicklow. I'd give them the nod and look. They'll be preparing for Waterford as well, and with a chance to play Cork in the semi-final and possibly look at a Munster final in their head. So look, I'd expect them to be flued into this game.
And Gaz, Limerick,
yeah, I
or
think
Wicklow?
we spoke about the Aughrim, tough venue to go to, but I think the step up in quality in Division 3, Wicklow have struggled with slightly. So, they've been able to bring it a certain point of the way, but they just don't have enough to get themselves over the line. So I think Limerick are on an upward trajectory, regardless of what happens in the league. I think they have a good vibe going there at the moment and a good actual squad of players. So I go with Limerick to win that one as well. Especially if it's a dry day now, you'd be expecting them to put up a decent score. So Limerick to win that one as well.
Yeah.
And John, then we come to it, the Coliseum that is Division 4. Daniel Goulding would know nothing about Division 4. Never played there. Me and Gaz there. Daniel,
It's all we know.
250 spectators and the dog knew more about football than the spectators.
We were in Division 1 at the time, or Division 2 as well, but we barely had 100 spectators at some of our games. I remember we played Cavan one year after we won the All-Ireland in a league game at Páirc Uí Chaoimh, and this after we won the All-Ireland, I think there was about 100 people at it, so we're used to that kind of Division 4 kind of amphitheatre as well.
Absolutely, and we can crack into it, lads. Division 4, you've Carlow against Wexford, and I suppose before I start asking the questions, Wexford's a big bother, Daniel, and even if they win this game, I still think they're in trouble regarding the football up there.
Yeah, I was kind of scratching my head after tipping them last week comfortably and next to Water. I looked at the tennis next to Waterford were after beating them, so all is not well there, and I suppose Paul Galvin kind of stuck the oar in a bit as well, and it seems to be seems to be hurling first up there at the moment by the looks of it, and it's going to be a big ask for them to beat Carlow, I'll be honest. So Carlow, I suppose, looking impressive against Waterford, and Waterford beating Wexford, if you're just doing the general sums, it doesn't look good, but after switching off, I'm still on there. My screen is after going off for some reason.
No hassle.
No, I'm back on there now. Sorry. Look, a bit of bother there, and some of the stories coming out of there are interesting to say the least. I suppose it's only hearsay, but it doesn't bode well. Usually, when there's stories coming out of a county, there's some element of truth in them.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I said during the week, Paul Galvin's very busy looking at his Mercs and his private jets, so he's a good man to be commenting on it. And Gaz, what about you? Wexford against the mighty Carlow.
Yeah, hard. Wexford are a hard county to figure out. You've obviously got the hurling aspect to it, but we're always pretty strong in the football stakes. They've come tumbling down a few years ago, and you were expecting them to bounce back straight away, and they haven't. The Galvin appointment was probably something everyone thought, here we go, like a bit like Mick O'Dwyer a couple of years ago in Wicklow, that was going to bring them right up to back to Division 2, Division 3, but it hasn't happened for whatever reason. There does, as Daniel has said and you boys have said, there's something not right in the background there. And look, we all know county boards up and down the country. You hear the stories of the dinosaurs, and everything's not sweet in every county. Maybe even in some of our own, it's not. But something's not right in Wexford, definitely. Carlow's a tough place to go to. We keep talking about tough places to go to, but.
Guys, can I just cut across you there? Daniel Goulding is smiling, trying not to say anything about Frank Murphy. Just leave him alone there. He's trying very carefully not to say anything about Frank.
No comment.
No comment.
We'll not get that. We do another pod on that, maybe, John. That could be.
He was a super administrator in his own way. But look, I suppose it's an interesting one. Yeah, he was like with some things. It's like anyone with some things. He was absolutely amazing. If you got a suspension, there was only one man you were going to take up to Croke Park, and that was Frank. So yeah, it's just funny how it works, and different county boards move at the times in different ways.
Yeah.
And if there was a celebrity boxing, not to prolong the rest of the games, but if there was a celebrity boxing match, Gaz and Daniel, in one word, who would win, Paul Galvin or Davy Fitz?
It's a hard one, actually, isn't it?
Yeah.
For charity.
Galvin's played more recently, so maybe the fitness might be a little. I actually played with Paul as well in Dublin. He played with Plunkets with me for a year, so I'd have to give Galvin the nod.
He'd probably need a mirror in his corner.
Use the caravan, Joe Kev. And guys, Carlo Wexford, who would you
Carlo,
think?
yeah. Carlo, John, I just like it's sometimes very hard to call these games in Division 4, but yeah, Carlo, just home advantage, and Wexford on the downward spiral.
Absolutely. The stage is yours, Kevin McGarty.
Yeah, so obviously coming into the last couple of games, Antrim, Leitrim, Gaz. Now, this one is obviously Leitrim have to make the long trip up to the metropolis that is West Belfast. They'll be lucky to get out of the place with the wheels in the bus intact, but how do you think the game will go?
Yeah, I know myself. Played in Corrigan Park quite a few times. So I'm well aware of it. And I tell you, your man that was in goals for years there, Jesus, he was nearly the epitome of the whole atmosphere up there. Chris, is it Kerr? Is it your man? Jesus, I'll tell you what. I never got abuse like I got on a field of a lad. But anyway,
guys, sorry to put in. He's a mental health ambassador, just to throw that in.
Exactly, I know that's what I do enjoy, to be honest with you, when I see it. And he used to be firing out, but anyway.
I'll plead the fifth. I'm meant to be going to a stag here in Ibiza very shortly, so I'll tell him you asked about him, Gaz.
Hit him a shot for me anyway, Kev. But I marked you once as well. I don't know if you remember, but you had a few choice words that day too, I think, back in the day. That's back a few years now. And there was a few shots with elbows as well that day. I
remember it. I think you put your feet down the back of my thigh.
That's all the abuse you were given. But we're actually, I remember going up to Corrigan Park years ago, and we were driving separately because I was going back to Dublin that night. And I remember taking a wrong turn. Whatever Google Maps in the UK, Kev, anyway, brought me up I wouldn't say a dark kind of a road. This was Sunday morning, of course, as you said earlier, a dead rubber. Neither of us could go up, neither of us could go down. But I remember pulling in the car, and I couldn't figure out where the GPS was bringing me. But there was a lad pulled in a lorry having a cup of tea and a sandwich. And he hopped out of the lorry and he says, "You lost." He seen the Southern Reg. And I said, "I'm looking for Corrigan Park." And he gave me a brief and he says, "Get out of here quick." He says, "or you won't last too long around here if they see that tracksuit." So that's my experiences in Corrigan Park. They've never been good ones. But look, we're in a bad place at the moment, Leitrim. And look, I wouldn't be too keen on having a go at people over the years, to be honest with you, our managers, our county boards, our players. But I see there's a little bit of, I think, of annoyance in Leitrim at the moment with the way maybe a few things have come out over. I see Terry had an article which kind of is claiming that until Leitrim sorts out its club football, that they're not going anywhere. And I understand the argument, and we've known about that for a long time in Leitrim. Our club football is the strongest. But, I mean, the club football wasn't an issue 2 years ago when we won every game in Division 4 and got to a league final in Croke Park. So I think maybe he needs to look closer to home in that sense. At the end of the day, external factors like club football and strength, a couple of years ago Roscommon beat us as well. He kind of blamed the strength and conditioning and the nutrition, but the same year we had went out and bet everyone in Division 4 as well. So we obviously know our strength and conditioning and our all those things need to be worked on to get bigger, more physical guys. But to be beaten by Louth, whose club championship I wouldn't think is a million miles ahead of our own, to be beaten by Louth by 10 points and then claim that the club football might be the issue. It's the same club football we had 2 years ago. So that's something I think the people, that I've been chatting to around Leitrim just wouldn't be too pleased that he seems to be dropping the blame elsewhere. Because that team is well capable of getting within 9 points and 7 points of Sligo. So I don't expect much from this weekend. Kev will tell us more about Antrim, but I listened to an interview McGinley done on Off the Ball, and he seems to speak very well, seems to have a really good understanding in the game. He's not taking things too seriously, and as he said himself, which I think we all take for granted, and that's maybe where Ulster football is beginning to change, is you're not going out and playing in a system anymore. I mean, if you're playing a wing half forward and you're looking over at the bench to wonder where you should be at a particular time of a game, that's not how high level footballers operate. So he's encouraging them to kind of play the moment, play the game as they see it, and it seems to be working well. I mean, I called Paddy Cunningham and the McCanns a couple of weeks ago, Kev, and I think you told me that the game has moved on, but Cunningham in the pocket the last 2 weekends has been well able to ping it over the bar. And I think maybe that's what we're missing in Leitrim. I mean, Kerry was quick to kind of maybe get rid of some of the older stock like myself a few years ago. But Mulligan is another lad who can do them kind of Paddy Cunningham type scores. And that's what we're maybe missing as well. Let the younger lads do the graft and maybe have the likes of Emlyn in the pocket. But look, I don't see anything but an Antrim win, but I know the Leitrim players are a determined bunch of young fellas, so hopefully they can lift it this week and put in a performance. All we're looking for is a performance on Sunday, never mind the result. But Antrim in this one for me. And Daniel?
Yeah, I suppose look at the table and look at the results so far. Yeah, it's interesting to hear kind of Highlands comments. Generally, I don't know, I think rightly or wrongly, when you're a manager, the buck stops with you. And even if you think inwardly that it doesn't stop with you, you most definitely don't portray that to the public. So look, because just from being involved in, I suppose all of us are the same. Like when you're looking for excuses, kind of outwardly, that seeps into the group as well, and it's not a good thing.
It's happened a couple of times as well, Daniel, which is the worry for yourself. If it happens once, it might have been just in the emotion of the game, but it's happened once or twice now, so that's the worrying thing from our perspective, you know.
Yeah. And look, Antrim again, I suppose, are on a crest of a wave, and we talk about the McCanns. I was over one of them in an All-Star trip in 2010. Big gas man. But yeah, it's great to see like those lads and Paddy Cunningham still playing, and like you take even David Tuberty with Clare, like it's you know, you really can't beat high level footballers, like even, you know, that can finish, and it's great to see those lads still kind of playing at that level. But I suppose to get back to the point, you'd have to fancy Antrim.
Yeah. Absolutely. And in the last game of the weekend, you have Louth versus Sligo, and Mickey Hart will be looking for a win, and then you have the McEntee factor with Sligo. So, Gary, it's an intriguing game.
Yeah, and on the other hand, we spoke about this at the very beginning, about the bounce that Louth, Sligo and Antrim would get, and it's kind of shown that Sligo very unlucky last weekend. Probably, Kevin, you've seen more than I did. And Louth seemed to be ticking on nicely now under Hart. He's probably getting a chance only now to kind of put his stuff in play. But apparently second half last week, Louth, and the bit I did see of the game, they just powered through Leitrim. So he's got them fit, he's got them firing, and any day you kick 19 points regardless of the opposition, you're well able to kick scores. So I think home advantage, I just tip Louth. All the soundings out of Sligo seem to be good. McEntee seems to speak really well. I mean, they played us, and it'll be the typical Nordy attitude. After the game, they bet us by 7 points, and he said he wasn't happy with their performance, and he wasn't happy. He thought they should have won by more. So that's kind of the stuff you want to be coming out with, instead of kind of looking for excuses. And that seems to be the way he's doing it down in Sligo. I mean, they hadn't won a game of note in maybe 2 or 3 years, and all of a sudden they're going in here with a right chance against Louth. So I'll call Louth because it's a home game, but two teams kind of would be pretty happy with their work so far, and it's a shootout, I think, maybe to see who's going to get into the promotion battle. So Louth just because of home advantage, and I think Sligo, a really young side, probably depending too much on Niall Murphy and Cawley at wing back. But again, we laugh and we joke about Division 4, Kevin, but there's some really, really entertaining games in that division. Has been for a long time, you know. So the great thing about the GA Go and everything that's available now, you're nearly getting a chance to see all these because you can't be there, obviously. So it's another one that will be probably high scoring, to be honest, because both teams seem to go at it, you know.
Yeah. GA Go is working for some of the games, I think. Parts of the games.
It's Daniel, I think you need to contact on Taoiseach. I think the rollout plan hasn't reached West Cork yet, you know.
I think Cork, I was watching the Cork game the last day, and they were flying in the first half, and maybe someone in the IT department in GA Go knew that Cork weren't going to score for 20 minutes, so they just cut us off, so it was fine.
Yeah, and the commentary was exceptional last weekend for the Cavan game. He never stopped for 70 minutes. So fair,
John,
fair.
I think last weekend's commentary, and I must mention this. BBC Radio Ulster were doing 2 games on Sunday, so they had Martin Clark and another guy, Oisin Lennon, down in Athletic Grounds, and they were the main commentary game for the Down Meath game. And they were jumping in between the Corrigan Park for the Antrim Sligo game. And Mark Sidebottom was on commentary with former Fermanagh player Ryan McCluskey. And as they jumped over from one game to the other, Mark Sidebottom, quote unquote, said, "You've just joined me and I have a bag of nuts in my mouth." sorry, it was a sack of nuts in my mouth. And I think that was just the end of commentary. So
strikes awards.
Jeez, I didn't think Ryan McCluskey was that way inclined, Kevin. Now, jeez, that's a new development. But we have Daniel Goulding going with this Louth Sligo game. What are you thinking?
I'd give the nod to Louth again. I'd say flip a coin, home advantage. Mickey Hart will be used to getting, small bit more experience getting his teams ready for these big games, and probably just a small bit of know-how at home. They'll see Louth over the line.
Yeah, absolutely. Last but not least, lads, talking points. Donegal ahead of the championship will need a win this weekend. So, Kevin, it's vital to get the win.
Yeah, Donegal there's so many unknown factors. As I said to them, there's more questions raised last weekend than there is answered going forward. We all know they need a big response, but look, the only good thing for them is, regardless of what happens in the league, they're going in to face a Down team that's at rock bottom. They get that underneath their belts. They will have a stiffer test when they come through that. They've got, I think, Derry then to come to Ballybofey. So the big issue is in around Murphy. Can they get their defence right, and really what contributions Orma McNeely's going to give? So interesting times ahead for them. Look, they have lots of different resources, lots of arsenal. It's about getting them pieces of the jigsaw all fitted back together, especially after the mental hit they took last year. So just at the minute, as Daniel and Gary have said, I'm a wee bit weary of where they are. I was really displeased with them last weekend. I thought they would have actually gone out and steamrollered Monaghan, but they didn't. So questions for them to answer in the weeks ahead. I fully expect them to come through that first round against Down. So after that, it'll be a wait and see, and they need Murphy back.
Yeah, absolutely. And Gary, I know you did tip Derry, but it's a vital game for Cavan. Kind of follow up, and if they want to progress this year, I suppose.
Yeah, I think it's important they get a result, John. Yeah, I mean the Fermanagh was a total result out of the blue for everybody. I think, including the Cavan boys, they seem to be brought right back down to earth. So, big result needed this weekend. I think they're going to have to maybe leave off the kind of defensive aspect of things and maybe go toe to toe with Derry here and give themselves a real idea where they're at, and whether these kind of young scoring forwards that they've coming in, John, you know more about them than I would, but that if they're as good as they're supposed to be, big test this weekend, and it's a great actual test pre-championship to see where they're at.
Yeah, and last but not least, Daniel, Wexford, they need a win to get some sort of confidence going up there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we talked about it extensively here already. I just love to be inside that group at the moment. And see what the players actually make of all the carry on. It'll either go one or two ways. It'll either be kind of forget about it, or it'll unify them. So the problem is if they were playing Waterford this weekend, you'd say right, fair enough. But I don't know, Carlow are going well. So still think it's going to be a hard game for Wexford to go and get a result there in Carlow.
Absolutely. Last but not least, Kevin McGarty, your player to watch this weekend.
So I picked Petey Hart last weekend. I was glad I did, because he did come through. The player for me to watch this weekend, Conor Glass from Derry. 2 great performances thus far. Lots of talk about him right across the media in Ireland. He seems to be stamping his authority all over games. I said to you before, I've seen him as a youngster. He's now stepping up to the mark as a senior player. Big game for him going away. This is his first real test, if I'm honest with you, against a decent quality side. So the likes of Geroid McKiernan going up against players like that, really interested to see him.
And absolutely. And if anyone's looking for a bet of the weekend, Kev?
I'm not going to say Leitrim, guys. Sorry. Do you know what? I'm going to upset Daniel. Clare at home.
Clare at home. Guys, your player of the weekend, your player to watch this weekend, and the bet of the weekend.
Oh, geez, you could have given me a heads up, John.
Sorry, guys.
Research isn't great. If he potentially plays in the same spot he was at the weekend, I'd like, or have a close eye on Matty Donnelly if he plays at 6. It's not a player to watch. We all know what he can do and we all know his attributes. But just off the top of my head, if he plays at 6 again, I'd like to see how he gets on. So I'll be watching him closely to see if he can back up the performance last weekend. Bet of the weekend. Oh, God. Let me see. There's not much to that I can think of there at the moment off the top of my head. Again, I go Longford against Fermanagh. Longford and Brewster Park.
Interesting. Finish up, Daniel Goulding, your player to watch this weekend and bet of the weekend.
Yeah, I'll give you 2 players. So Owen Cleary from Clare and Luke Connolly from Cork as well. I watched Luke last week, and as I said, he's streaky. Like when he can do amazing things, and he can give away 3 balls in a row. So he's due. I think he's due a game where he's going to kind of have one of his set the world alight moments that he does every so often. So I think they'll need it if Cork are going to win. I think they'll need that. So just to see the 2 of them play against each other, would be the 2 lads I'd like to look forward to. I'll be watching the game anyway. Do you know what, bet of the week for the crack, I'm going to throw it out there. I'm going to bank on Kerry not putting out their full team. I think Roscommon will take them up there.
Oh, it was a dirty dig by the Rebel against the Kingdom. John, can we also have a collective bet that sometime in the next century Celtic might employ Eddie Howe?
It's taken a while now, isn't it? The whole dragging out.
Man, you want to live where I live? There's almost civil war about it.
Absolutely.
It was Zidane now, Kevin, the hat. Throw him in.
Yeah. Zidane, yeah.
Zidane, it would be like Zidane would be teaching astrophysics to kindergarten if he went there.
Absolutely brilliant. Round 3, ding ding, Allianz League covered once again. Kevin, Gary, Daniel, thanks a million for joining me on the JMUC podcast. And of course, this podcast is sponsored by OrgaRetro.com. Check the website out for all your retro gear needs and wants. Boys, have a great weekend. Thanks very much.
Yeah, boys.
Boys, see you later.
Thanks, lads.
Cheers, boys.